Did Biden and the Dems stop a midterm rout by lying that they were going to cancel student debt when in fact they might not do that at all? It is of course commonly understood now that an expected red wave did not materialise. Is this because Trump is no longer an effective politician? Or could another explanation be that young people turned out in record numbers in part because of student debt cancellation, a pledge made by Biden that a little like his cannabis laws may not amount to very much at all. This is a fascinating story that shows that the pledge to cancel student debt may not be as straightforward as we'd first thought, that there were numerous ways that this legislation could have been passed, and the route that's been chosen actually means that student debt may not be meaningfully cancelled at all. Have a look.
Hey folks, I wanted you to hear it right from me.
Who else would it be from? Who else is going to tell you? Would you wait to read it on your son's laptop?
Here's what you should know. We're going to forgive $10,000 of federal student loan debt, keeping my campaign promise. For the people who need the help the most, the folks who went to school on Pell Grants, we're going to forgive a total of $20,000.
This seems like a good pledge to me. Now, I know many of you will think, why should a particular class of people, the educated class, get relief that's not being afforded to, for example, tradespeople? And that's an interesting argument, and an argument I'm sympathetic to. Broadly speaking, though, I think that education, whether it's in trades or in academia, should be granted for as close to free as possible. Educate your population, awaken and enlighten them. But this information that Biden is conveying here is not true in the manner that he's explaining. Let's get into it a little more deeply. In the midterms, voters under the age of 29 broke for the Democrats in overwhelming numbers, helping turn the much feared red wave into a red trickle. In a speech on Wednesday night, President Biden acknowledged that student debt relief played a big role in motivating the historic turnout of young people. Debt relief almost certainly played a decisive role in key races, including Senate races. Consider Pennsylvania, where cancellation champion John Fetterman beat Dr. Oz. In Arizona, Mark Kelly, another proponent of cancellation, exceeded expectations. Not so for Ohio Democrat and Senate hopeful Tim Ryan, who strongly opposed Biden's cancellation plan and lost to J.D. Vance. On Twitter, the White House Chief of Staff, Ron Klain, made a similar point, saying that President Biden kept his promises to younger Americans and they responded with energy and enthusiasm. Not like when he sniffs their heads. The problem is that Klain's comment isn't totally accurate. Young people did indeed respond with energy and enthusiasm to at least one promise that is to date unfulfilled. Almost 3 months after Biden's cancellation program was announced, not a single person has seen a penny of relief. Okay, well that could be because bureaucratic processes take a while and we wouldn't expect those promises to have been delivered on yet. But let's look at some of the administrative details in the way that this measure has been taken, some of which certainly raise questions. And now they may not ever see relief. On Thursday night, a Trump-appointed judge in Texas struck down the student loan cancellation program. Now, of course, many people who dislike Donald Trump will say, well, of course, a Trump-appointed judge has struck this down. However, what's curious is it needn't have gone that route at all. Listen carefully. While the president has blasted the Republicans behind these lawsuits, the real story is more complicated. Biden could have directed the education secretary to cancel people's debts using the Compromise and Settlement Authority granted in the Higher Education Act of 1965. But instead, his administration invoked a different and more limited legal authority. It was this limited authority that the Texas judge formally took issue with. So, had he wanted to, a measure could have been immediately taken to instantly cancel that debt, bypassing the Trump judge. So one hypothesis could be that they took this route knowing it would get struck down by a Trump-appointed judge. Now, if we had proper access and proper investigative journalism, we would of course ask someone close to Biden, why didn't you use the Compromise and Settlement Act if it was always your intention? Note how the cannabis laws were only enacted at a federal level, meaning nobody was released from prison rather than some people were released from prison. They also chose to make borrowers apply for the program instead of automatically issuing cancellation, a slow-moving process that bought their billionaire-backed opponents valuable time to cook up legal arguments, find plaintiffs, and line their cases up with sympathetic judges. So again, the manner in which this was undertaken was not the only one, but it was the least efficient one. It granted valuable time to opponents of the measures so they could line their ducks up and prevent the bill being passed if they wanted to. Also, it provides a convenient get-out clause because a Trump-appointed judge axed the idea. The simple truth is whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, your party is significantly backed by billionaires. Now, things get even more interesting here because Biden has publicly said that this law has already been passed, which is an absolute lie. Now, Biden does get confused pretty regular, so let's give him the benefit of the doubt. President Joe Biden falsely claimed last week that he got his student debt forgiveness initiative passed by Congress. During an on-camera discussion conducted by progressive organisation Now This News, Biden told young activists that they are probably aware I just signed a law that is being challenged by Republicans. Biden then said it's passed, I got it passed by a vote or two, and it's in effect. That's one of those lies where you provide too much detail. Yeah, I don't know why these earrings are by my bed. I guess it's because I've become an earring salesman in my spare time. What Biden's done there is he's provided too much detail on top of a lie. It hasn't been passed. It hasn't been subject to a vote. So what on earth was he saying? Facts First said Biden's claims are incorrect. Biden created his student debt forgiveness initiative through executive action, not through legislation. So he did not sign a law and he didn't get the initiatives passed by any number of votes. The Biden administration has now stopped accepting applications for federal student loan forgiveness. So what's interesting about this story is that whether or not you think that student debt should be cancelled, and I personally think that it should be, and that people ought to be educated. I think that everybody should have access to education, whether that's in academia or in trades. I think that's an important function of the state to provide that kind of education, especially when you look at how much is spent elsewhere. But if you do deliver those kind of pledges and galvanise and mobilise voters in that way, then you certainly have to deliver, and I would say deliver efficiently and not lie about it. Perhaps the reason they feel free to make these kind of pledges and claims is because the way they regard young people, voters more generally, but young people in particular, is as kind of little more than children, perhaps as idiots. And if you think that's extreme, have a look at this.
What's the other thing we know about this population? And it's a specific phase of life. Remember, age is more than a chronological fact.
It isn't, actually.
What else do we know about this population, 18 through 24? They are stupid. That is why we put them in dormitories. And they have a resident assistant. They make really bad decisions.
Now, perhaps Kamala Harris, give her the benefit of the doubt, was joking in that situation. But that does chime with my general assessment that we are regarded by people in power as little more than idiots and at best as children that have to be coordinated and guided, who it's okay to lie to. I would not identify as a Republican or a Democrat, and I would say that whoever had come out on top in those midterms, ordinary people's lives, generally speaking, would not have significantly improved, certainly not in the way that they would if we were to radically change our systems of government so they were representative of the interests of ordinary people and not a reflection of the requirements of corporate elites, globalist agenda, mainstream media. You know the list by now, surely. It's interesting to see another apparent political victory boiling down to a bit of tactical ingenuity, a pledge made that will only be delivered upon in a limited way, perhaps affording opponents of that legislation or regulation, however you regard it, whether it's the correct term, the opportunity to prevent it being meaningfully passed. Why was it not passed in the most effective way? Why was the debt not cancelled immediately? Why are similar measures not afforded to people that trained in trades as well as just in academia? Is it that it was simply a tactic to mobilise a certain demographic while alienating another portion of the population? So, even in instances where it seems like something's being given back to ordinary people, there are often invisible administrative veils being drawn and levers being pulled to prevent real change happening.
We're going to forgive $10,000 of federal student loan debt, keeping my campaign promise.
This is politics in microcosm. Like many of Joe Biden's pre-election pledges, is not being meaningfully fulfilled. Saudi Arabia are not being made a pariah. People are not being released in significant numbers from prison as a result of cannabis pledges. And even the pledge to cancel student debt has not been done in the most efficient way. What does it tell you that people will enthusiastically respond to being offered just a meagre amount of hope? What kind of state are we in as a people where piecemeal measures are seen as cause for celebration? This is how politics operates now. So much deception, so much despondency, so much despair that small pledges inefficiently delivered are seen as major victories, when in fact probably what they are is just just tactical maneuvering in order to motivate voters while doing the minimum possible in order to continue to not inconvenience your billionaire backers. Whether it's this pledge that doesn't look like it's going to be delivered in anything like the degree that was promised, or perhaps more significantly, the pledge not to exacerbate tensions on a global scale that could lead to nuclear war. It seems between the discourse of politics and the delivery of politics is a vast gap. And in that gap, there is continuing despondency, continuing despair, and in my mind, reason to continue to be cynical and skeptical about the game of politics, the spectacle of modern democracy. But that's just what I think. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at either of these. Remember to sign up to my mailing list, and remember, these videos are up first and in full on Rumble every day, completely uncensored and streamed live. See you then. Stay free.